"You're not marriage material like he is. He actually wants commitment," she said while I had the ring in my pocket. Those words would haunt me for months, but they also saved me from the biggest mistake of my life. At 27, I thought I had everything figured out: successful business, beautiful girlfriend, the kind of life people envied on social media. Looking back, I was living in a golden cage of my own making, desperately trying to prove I belonged in a world that would never truly accept me. I co-founded CryptoVault with my college roommate Wesley 3 years ago, turning late-night blockchain analysis sessions in our cramped dorm into one of Miami's hottest fintech startups. We went from managing our own modest Bitcoin investments to overseeing $300 million in digital assets for high-net-worth clients across the globe. The growth was absolutely insane: 18-hour days fueled by endless coffee and determination, debugging complex algorithms until my eyes burned, but watching our client base explode from 12 early adopters to over 8,000 investors made every sleepless night worth it. I genuinely loved the work, the problem-solving, the innovation of creating something that actually mattered in the financial world. Building something real from nothing but ideas and relentless effort felt incredible, like I was contributing to the future of finance itself. The technical challenges excited me more than any luxury purchase ever could. Wesley and I would spend entire weekends analyzing market patterns, developing new security protocols, and refining our trading algorithms. By my 26th birthday, I was pulling in serious money, enough to afford a luxury condo in Brickell with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bay, drive cars I used to only see in magazines, and eat at restaurants where the wine list cost more than most people's rent. I thought I'd made it, thought I'd achieved everything I'd dreamed about since college. Then I met Stella at an art gallery opening in Wynwood, and suddenly my entire definition of success completely shifted in ways I didn't understand at the time. She was absolutely magnetic in every sense of the word: 5 feet 8 inches with platinum blonde hair that caught the light perfectly, emerald eyes that seemed to see right through people, and this effortless confidence that made everyone in any room gravitate toward her like she was the center of their universe. She worked as a luxury yacht broker for Ultramarine, selling multi-million-dollar vessels to tech moguls, oil executives, and celebrities who treated boats like most people treated cars. Her Instagram had 450,000 followers who hung on her every post about Formula One after-parties in Monaco, private island getaways in the Caribbean, and exclusive restaurant openings where reservations required connections money couldn't buy. When she agreed to go out with me after we talked for 20 minutes about cryptocurrency's impact on luxury markets, I felt like I'd won the lottery jackpot. Here was this incredible woman who moved through Miami's elite social circles like she owned them, who knew celebrities by their first names and could get VIP access to events I'd never even heard of, and somehow she'd chosen me over dozens of other guys who were clearly interested that night. I knew from social media and casual mentions that she'd dated tech billionaires, celebrity athletes, guys with inherited fortunes and family names that opened doors I didn't even know existed in this city. These weren't just wealthy men, they were generational wealth, the kind of people who summered in places I couldn't pronounce and considered private jets a basic necessity rather than an extravagance. But she picked me, the guy who built his success one line of code at a time, who still got genuinely excited about solving complex technical problems and watching our platform help people build real wealth. I should have felt confident about that choice, should have trusted that my intelligence and ambition were enough to keep someone like her interested. Instead, I spent our entire 2-year relationship trying to prove I belonged in her rarefied world, constantly second-guessing myself and wondering when she'd wake up and realize she could do so much better. Every expensive dinner became a performance, every luxury vacation turned into an audition for her approval, every VIP experience felt like a test I might fail if I showed too much excitement about things that were routine for her circle. I constantly felt like I was one social misstep away from her realizing she'd settled for someone beneath her station, and that insecurity slowly poisoned everything that had been good and genuine between us from the beginning. Building CryptoVault from the ground up was the most challenging and rewarding experience of my life, but Stella made me feel like it wasn't impressive enough to matter in her world. Wesley and I had started with nothing but laptops, energy drinks, and an obsession with blockchain technology that our professors thought was a waste of time. We spent sophomore year analyzing cryptocurrency market patterns until 3 a.m., developing algorithms that could predict price movements with 73% accuracy, and slowly building a client base of tech-savvy college friends who trusted us with their modest investments. By junior year, we were managing $50,000 for 12 clients. By graduation, we'd hit $2 million under management and moved into a real office space in downtown Miami. The growth was exponential. 18 months later, we were overseeing $300 million in assets for over 8,000 clients worldwide, from small-time investors to hedge fund managers who appreciated our innovative approach to digital asset management. I was genuinely proud of what we'd built through pure innovation and relentless work ethic, but Stella had this way of making every achievement feel small and inadequate compared to the inherited wealth surrounding her daily life. She'd listen to me explain our latest breakthrough in decentralized finance with this polite smile that never reached her eyes, then casually mention how Sebastian, her ex-boyfriend, had bought a $4 million penthouse in Brickell by age 26 using family money from his father's pharmaceutical empire. When I got excited about landing a major institutional client, she'd nod absently and tell me about Dominic, another ex who owned 3 restaurants in South Beach because his family's private equity firm specialized in hospitality investments. The comparisons were never direct or obviously cruel. Stella was too sophisticated for that kind of obvious manipulation, but they accumulated like tiny cuts that eventually became deep wounds to my confidence. She'd mention how Alessandro could get VIP access to any nightclub in South Beach without paying or waiting because his father owned half the commercial real estate in the city. When I surprised her with courtside Heat tickets that cost me $800 each, she'd thank me sweetly, then tell me about how her friend's boyfriend had a permanent box at the arena because his family owned a stake in the team. Every achievement I was proud of became diminished when filtered through her casual observations about the trust fund babies and generational wealth heirs who populated her social circle like they were the natural order of things. My best friend Marcus, a paramedic who worked brutal 12-hour shifts saving lives for $55,000 a year, repeatedly warned me that Stella treated relationships like business transactions where she was constantly evaluating better offers. Marcus had known me since high school, had watched me work 3 jobs to pay for college while building CryptoVault on the side, and he couldn't understand why I let someone make me feel inferior for actually earning my success. He'd point out that Stella never asked about the technical challenges I was solving, never showed genuine interest in the innovations Wesley and I were pioneering in blockchain security, never celebrated our victories unless they came with social status she could leverage. Marcus would get frustrated watching me stress about impressing people who'd never worked for anything meaningful in their lives, who treated money like oxygen instead of recognizing the effort required to earn it legitimately. He'd remind me that paramedics, teachers, engineers, and entrepreneurs like me were building the actual foundation of society while Stella's crowd just inherited their positions and spent their time networking at charity galas they attended for Instagram content rather than genuine philanthropy. But I was too deeply invested in proving myself worthy of her attention to listen to his practical wisdom about recognizing people who appreciated authentic value versus those who only respected inherited privilege. The worst part was how Stella's constant comparisons slowly rewired my brain to see my legitimate business success as somehow insufficient or embarrassing compared to family money that required no effort, intelligence, or innovation to acquire. For Stella's 26th birthday, I decided to go completely over the top and rented a luxury villa in Ibiza for $22,000, bringing her entire influencer friend group along for what I hoped would be an unforgettable celebration that proved I could compete with her ex's extravagant gestures. The villa was absolutely stunning: 8 bedrooms, infinity pool overlooking the Mediterranean, private chef, and concierge service that could arrange anything from yacht charters to VIP access at the island's most exclusive clubs. I'd coordinated everything myself, handling flights, ground transportation, restaurant reservations, and activities for 8 people because I wanted Stella to feel completely pampered and celebrated without worrying about any details. The guest list included her closest friends from Miami's influencer scene, and I should have realized immediately that I was walking into a social minefield designed to make me feel like an outsider funding my own humiliation. There was Valentina, a luxury travel blogger with 200,000 followers who made money posting photos of herself in bikinis at five-star resorts her various boyfriends paid for, always accompanied by captions about living her best life and manifesting abundance. Phoenix was this trust fund DJ who pretended to be self-made but actually lived off family money while playing at underground clubs and talking about his artistic vision like he was revolutionizing electronic music instead of just pressing play on other people's tracks. Maxine came as Sebastian's current girlfriend, and she spent the entire trip shooting daggers at Stella while pretending to be friendly, clearly sensing the obvious chemistry and unresolved feelings between her boyfriend and my girlfriend. But Sebastian himself was the worst part of the whole experience, tall, conventionally handsome, with that effortless confidence that comes from never having to prove yourself or worry about money because daddy's pharmaceutical empire meant he'd been wealthy since birth. He'd apparently been investing family money in wellness retreats and spiritual therapy centers across Europe, which somehow made him a visionary entrepreneur in everyone's eyes despite never having built anything from scratch or solved any real problems. The entire group spent their time discussing their third homes in Mykonos, debating which private island parties had the best networking opportunities, and name-dropping celebrities they'd partied with like it was some kind of competitive sport that I'd never learned the rules for. I realized within hours that I was surrounded by people who'd never worked a real job, never solved actual problems, never created value for anyone beyond themselves, yet they all acted like they were more sophisticated and worldly than someone who'd actually built a business from nothing. Despite funding the entire trip, providing them with this incredible luxury experience, and handling every logistical detail so they could just relax and enjoy themselves, I felt like hired help rather than Stella's boyfriend. I watched her laugh at Sebastian's stories about his spiritual awakening at an ayahuasca retreat in Peru, saw her eyes light up when he talked about expanding his wellness empire to Tulum, and noticed how she'd unconsciously lean toward him during conversations while barely acknowledging my presence unless she needed me to handle something practical like making dinner reservations or arranging transportation to the beach clubs. While preparing drinks in the villa's kitchen on our third night, I overheard a conversation that shattered every illusion I'd been clinging to about my relationship with Stella and her feelings toward me. I was making mojitos for everyone because the private bartender had gone home, and I could hear Stella talking with Valentina and Maxine on the terrace just outside the open kitchen window. I wasn't intentionally eavesdropping, but their voices carried clearly in the Mediterranean night air, and what I heard made my blood run cold with the devastating realization that I'd been living a complete lie. Stella was telling them how I was adorably middle class and still got genuinely excited about business class upgrades like it was some kind of major achievement worth celebrating, which apparently amused her because Sebastian's family always flew private and considered commercial aviation beneath them regardless of the cabin class. She described me as her stability era after the chaos of dating Sebastian, explaining that I was financially secure and predictably reliable but utterly lacking in the spontaneity and social connections that made life actually exciting and worth living. The conversation revealed that she kept me around purely for financial security and emotional comfort while desperately missing the thrill and prestige of dating someone with real generational wealth and legitimate social influence in circles that actually mattered. She told them I was like dating a really successful accountant who remembered to buy flowers and plan thoughtful surprises but could never understand or provide access to the kind of lifestyle she'd grown accustomed to with her previous boyfriends. This devastating revelation occurred while Phoenix made increasingly cruel jokes about me being whipped and completely under Stella's control, calling me a beta male who threw money at problems because I lacked the natural confidence and social status to command respect any other way. Sebastian contributed his own smirking commentary about how some guys try to buy their way into circles they'll never truly belong in, suggesting that everyone except me understood my actual role in this dynamic as the reliable provider who funded experiences for more interesting people. I stood frozen in that kitchen, hands trembling as I squeezed lime after lime, listening to the woman I'd planned to propose to dissect my every insecurity and inadequacy for her friend's entertainment while the man she clearly still wanted validated every cruel observation with his knowing laughter. The conversation continued for what felt like hours but was probably only 10 minutes, with Stella detailing how I worked too much, took everything too seriously, and couldn't understand why anyone would want to party until dawn when we could just stay in and watch Netflix like some boring married couple already settled into middle-aged routine. She mentioned how Sebastian used to surprise her with spontaneous trips to St. Tropez or Mykonos, how he knew everyone worth knowing from Monaco to Miami, and how being with him felt like starring in her own luxury lifestyle documentary rather than dating someone whose idea of adventure was trying a new restaurant that required reservations more than a week in advance. During a high-stakes poker game at 2 a.m. where everyone casually bet $1,000 per hand like it was pocket change, tensions finally exploded when Stella publicly humiliated me for working on my laptop instead of gambling away money I'd actually earned through years of effort and innovation. I'd been responding to urgent messages from Wesley about a major acquisition offer from Goldman Sachs that could change our entire future, but to Stella and her friends, I was just being my typical boring self who prioritized work over fun even during a luxury vacation I was funding. She announced loudly that I was embarrassing her by acting like some kind of workaholic nerd who couldn't relax and enjoy the moment, then declared that if I couldn't keep up with the energy of the group, maybe I should just leave since I was bringing down everyone's vibe with my constant focus on business responsibilities. The entire room erupted in laughter as Phoenix made jokes about how I was probably calculating the probability of winning each hand instead of just enjoying the thrill of gambling, while Sebastian smirked and suggested that some people just aren't built for the spontaneous lifestyle that comes naturally to those born into real wealth. When Stella looked directly at me with undisguised contempt and said I should either commit to being present for her friends or leave if I couldn't handle keeping up with people who knew how to actually live, I felt something fundamental shift inside me like a switch being flipped permanently. I closed my laptop, looked around the table at these parasites who'd never created anything valuable in their entire lives, and said the only 3 words that mattered at that moment with complete calm and conviction. I calmly responded with a simple phrase that would change everything, then walked out of the villa at 4 a.m. and booked the next available flight back to Miami without saying another word to any of them. As I sat in the airport waiting for my departure, I opened my laptop and made a decision that had been building for months but crystallized in that moment of absolute clarity about what actually mattered in life. I approved the acquisition deal Wesley had been discussing with Goldman Sachs, selling CryptoVault for $85 million with my personal share being approximately $28 million after taxes, legal fees, and partnership distributions. The decision represented both my liberation from trying to impress people who would never respect earned success and my commitment to building wealth and happiness on my own terms rather than constantly seeking approval from social parasites who confused inheritance with achievement. In that departure lounge, surrounded by normal people traveling for business or family visits, I realized that I'd been living in a toxic bubble where my genuine accomplishments were treated as inferior to trust fund handouts, where my work ethic was mocked as obsessive rather than admirable, and where my desire to build something meaningful was seen as boring compared to spending other people's money on meaningless experiences. The acquisition would be announced publicly within days, making headlines in TechCrunch and Bloomberg as one of the year's most significant fintech exits, but more importantly, it would free me from ever needing to prove my worth to anyone who couldn't recognize value when they saw it. I boarded that plane knowing I was walking away from more than just a toxic relationship. I was escaping an entire worldview that had nearly destroyed my self-respect and sense of purpose by convincing me that earned success was somehow less valuable than inherited privilege. Stella's frantic messages started flooding my phone the moment she realized I'd actually left Ibiza without a word, evolving from confused questions to angry accusations to desperate pleas as she slowly grasped that I wasn't playing some dramatic game to get her attention. The initial texts were dismissive, asking where I'd gone and suggesting I was being childish by storming off over some harmless girl talk, but within hours her tone shifted to panic as she realized I wasn't responding and had seemingly vanished from her life completely. I'd blocked her on everything before my flight even took off, but she found ways to reach me through mutual friends' phones, fake social media accounts, and even Wesley's business email, each message more desperate than the last as the reality of losing her financial safety net began to sink in. The crypto acquisition news broke 3 days later in TechCrunch with the headline, Miami fintech startup CryptoVault acquired by Goldman Sachs for $85 million in strategic blockchain expansion, followed by a Bloomberg piece detailing the innovative algorithms Wesley and I had developed and our plans for the future of decentralized finance. The articles mentioned my name specifically as co-founder and chief technology officer, along with quotes about how the acquisition would accelerate institutional adoption of cryptocurrency management platforms, making it impossible for anyone in Miami's business community to miss my massive windfall. Stella's panicked attempts to reconnect intensified immediately after the news broke, with her creating new Instagram accounts to send me desperate messages about how she'd made a terrible mistake and needed to explain herself, how everything she'd said in Ibiza was just insecurity talking and didn't represent her real feelings about our relationship. She started posting cryptic Instagram stories about people who abandon you when they achieve success, about loyalty being tested during transitions, and about missing someone who understood your dreams before they forgot where they came from, clearly trying to create a narrative where I was the villain for cutting contact after achieving financial success. The strategy backfired spectacularly when multiple mutual friends who'd been in Ibiza started commenting with receipts about her actual behavior, sharing screenshots of voice messages where she'd called me embarrassingly grateful for basic rich people experiences and complained about my middle-class excitement over business achievements that trust fund babies took for granted. Her friend Valentina, apparently feeling guilty or perhaps sensing which way the social winds were blowing, leaked details about Stella's kitchen conversation to other influencers, revealing how she'd called our relationship her stability era and described me as boring but reliable compared to the excitement of dating inherited wealth. The social media disaster cost her several lucrative brand partnerships with luxury companies who didn't want to be associated with someone publicly exposed as a gold digger, including a $50,000 annual deal with a high-end jewelry brand and a sponsored travel contract worth $30,000 that required her to project authentic relationship content. Her carefully curated influencer friend group began distancing themselves as the story spread through Miami's social media circles, with Phoenix making jokes about karma and Sebastian publicly unfollowing her when Maxine threatened to leave him if he maintained any connection to the drama surrounding his ex-girlfriend's exposed manipulation tactics. 6 months after the Ibiza disaster, I had completely transformed my life in ways I'd never imagined possible, worth $28 million and living in a stunning minimalist penthouse overlooking Biscayne Bay that I'd bought cash without needing to impress anyone or seek approval for my choices. I'd started a new blockchain venture focused on financial inclusion for underbanked communities rather than chasing social status, working with brilliant developers who shared my passion for solving real problems instead of catering to trust fund babies who treated technology like another luxury accessory. The new company was everything CryptoVault should have been from the beginning: mission-driven, innovative, and completely disconnected from the vapid social climbing that had nearly destroyed my sense of purpose and self-worth. Meanwhile, Stella's carefully constructed influencer career had crumbled spectacularly as brands dropped her sponsorship deals. Sebastian ghosted her completely when she became a social media liability that threatened his own reputation, and she was reportedly moving to Los Angeles to rebuild her image away from Miami's tight-knit influencer scene where everyone knew about her exposed gold-digging behavior. The Miami business community, particularly the tech sector, had essentially blacklisted her from serious networking events after word spread about how she'd treated successful entrepreneurs as walking ATMs rather than respecting the innovation and hard work required to build legitimate businesses. I found genuine peace through weekly therapy sessions with Dr. Martinez, a brilliant psychologist who helped me understand how I'd allowed my insecurities about belonging to override my natural confidence in my abilities and achievements. We worked on rebuilding my sense of self-worth from the inside out, focusing on the intrinsic value of my work and character rather than seeking validation from people who were fundamentally incapable of recognizing authentic success. I'd also discovered Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, training 5 mornings a week at a gym where nobody cared about your net worth or social media following, just your dedication to improvement and respect for the art, which gave me a physical outlet for stress and a community of people who valued discipline and hard work over inherited privilege. Most importantly, I'd reconnected with Marcus and other genuine friends who'd known me before the money and success, people who celebrated my achievements without trying to leverage them for their own benefit or making me feel guilty for working hard to build something meaningful. My new social circle included other entrepreneurs, engineers, scientists, and creators, people who generated value rather than just consuming it, who understood that real success came from solving problems and building solutions rather than networking at charity galas for Instagram content. Through therapy and honest self-reflection, I learned to distinguish between people who loved my potential versus those who actually loved and respected me as a person, understanding that the most expensive lesson had also been the most valuable in teaching me that genuine respect and authentic love couldn't be purchased but had to be earned through character and mutual understanding. The relationship with Stella had taught me that I could never buy my way into genuine acceptance from people who fundamentally didn't respect earned success, but more importantly, it showed me that I didn't need their approval to live a fulfilling life surrounded by people who appreciated my actual values and contributions. I realized that true freedom wasn't having enough money to impress superficial people, but having the wisdom and self-respect to build relationships with individuals who valued authenticity over appearances, substance over status, and genuine connection over transactional arrangements based on financial benefit.